everybody. My name is Hannah Heath, pronoun she, her, hers, and I am here today with Regina Hockert to discuss accessible online events. We are members of the Disability Coalition of Cal Poly, and this presentation was put together by us, as well as Raina Knowles and Jordan Nemick, who couldn't be here today, but they both did design some of these slides, so shout out to them. Before we get started, we did want to mention that all of our slides use green backgrounds with white or yellow text, and we will be reading this text to you as we go, so that way this presentation is accessible to those who are blind and low vision. And kind of along that same note, a verbal image description of myself, I'm wearing a yellowish orange t-shirt. I have short black hair with a pink streak in the front, and in the background I have some different artwork and books. And yeah, I think that's it. So this presentation, we're going to talk about why it's important to make online events accessible, and then we're going to jump into talking about all of the different aspects of online event planning, marketing, and what to do during and after your online events to make them accessible. And that is it. So why make online events accessible? So there are a lot of reasons. First and foremost is inaccessibility does unfortunately extend beyond physical barriers. Barriers do exist in virtual spaces. So some examples of this would be videos not being properly captioned. So they're not accessible to those who are deaf or hard of hearing or who have auditory processing symptoms. You might have material that's not properly optimized for people who are blind or low vision. You might have material that's not great for people with different learning disabilities. And it makes it really difficult for information to be accessed by people, and so you are excluding a lot of different disabled people from being able to interact with your events and with any information that you're putting out, which is just, it's not good. Next is you want to make sure that you're supporting intersecting identities. Disabled people make up 25% of the population, which means it's not uncommon for disabled people to also belong to other minority or marginalized identities. So it's unfortunate to hold, say, like a pride event that is really great for people who are part of the LGBTQ community, but also are inaccessible, because then that means any disabled people who are also LGBTQ or who are allies who want to attend that event now can't, because it's not accessible to them. So you really do want to make sure that you're making your events as inclusive as possible. And then lastly, accessible events do benefit everyone. So a lot of things that are helpful for disabled people are actually really great for people of all different backgrounds. An example of this being closed captionings, while helpful for people with disabilities, can also be really helpful for, say, children who are learning how to read or people who are learning English for the first time. So you really want to make sure that you're making your online events accessible, because it just makes everything so much better and more inclusive.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Regina Hockert, pronoun she, they. I have long brown hair. I'm currently wearing glasses and a black shirt, and I have some white walls behind me with some flags on them. So now we're going to talk a little bit about planning your accessible events. So the first thing that I want to impress upon you is to always plan for accessibility first. If you plan your event with accessibility in mind and have sort of like a list of things that you want to be cognizant about, it makes it way easier than trying to change events to be accessible after the fact. And it also shows your disabled student body and your disabled faculty and staff that they are being thought of and considered in all steps of the event, and not just a, last, oh no, we have to take care of this too. It's, like it's intended to be accessible and make sure that everyone can participate. So some things that you always want to have in mind and make sure that you're doing are captioning and transcription. You always want to be providing captions and a transcript to people, as Hannah mentioned, and as we've mentioned before, it allows deaf and hard of hearing people to have equal access to information, people with processing, auditory processing symptoms, all of the above. Everybody benefits from captioning. Okay, and you want a concise email detailing your expectations and the information about your event, such as like how long it will last, are there going to be breaks involved, do they need to come prepared to do like anything, like if you're having some sort of like icebreaker get to know you, do they need facts about themselves, anything like that. You want to make sure that they know what's happening in advance. You also want to provide the schedule and details in advance to make sure that if people have, say, like medications that they have to take, or stretching, or physical therapy, or they have to get food, or anything like that, that they can understand what their schedule is going to look like and plan around that for their own well being and care. So, some important things to think about when you're planning accessible events: always plan breaks. I know that even in an online environment, sometimes it can feel like maybe people don't need breaks, but that is not true. Breaks help everyone. If people need to go get a snack, go to the bathroom, stretch, get up out of their chairs, get water, anything like that, it's very beneficial to have the breaks scheduled in, and so people don't need to either disrupt the event or leave and miss some of the important content that you're providing. Provide multiple ways to get information and have that information accessible. So, like, don't just have it in a graphic form or a text form, or just on a PowerPoint. Provide people with links or other ways to have that information, um, accessible formats, whenever you can and however you can. Record your meeting if possible. This allows people to go back and revisit certain pieces or information that they may have missed, or that they may need a little bit of clarification on. Sometimes people are not able to be in a meeting and also take notes at the same time, and so this also allows people to have a, a copy of everything that happened, so that if they need clarification, they can go back and look at it. Don't require to have your camera or microphone on. Allow people to use the chat function or send messages if they need to. Um, and having your camera and microphone off allows people, especially people with chronic fatigue or chronic pain, to save some of that energy if it is not vital to their participation. And offer note taking services or a downloadable transcript or both, which allows people to have the notes and information from the meeting or from the event, that they can access as they need to, and so they don't have to worry about trying to make sure that they have notes during the meeting or event. It's already there, taken care of for them.
All right, so marketing the events. You want to make sure that you're marketing your online event in an accessible format. So that means making sure that any images that you put out are accessible. We have created an entire training on this, which we're going to link below. But just briefly, you want to make sure that your images are accessible by using image descriptions and alt text. You want to make sure that all of your file types are in a correct and accessible format, such as using a tagged PDF and or a Word document. It's usually best to offer both in case somebody's assistive device works with one and not the other. You want to make sure that any font that you're using is accessible, so you don't want to be using anything that's like really cursive or loopy or uses a lot of italics or like bright neon colors, or sometimes people will do these really cool graphics but the text will be like upside down at some point, and like that's not some people can't read that. So you want to make sure that either you don't do that, or if you do that, you have the same exact information written in an accessible format, also very clearly visible somewhere on your marketing like flyer or post. You want to make sure that all of your colors have proper contrast, and you want to make sure that you're providing clear communication. So making sure that you tell people who they can contact if they have accessibility needs. So this is what we call a statement of accessibility, and this needs to be everywhere that you talk about your event. This means you want to put it on your website and on your social media posts. A statement of accessibility mentions things like, yes, we will have closed captioning. Yes, we will be doing verbal image descriptions. Yes, this is the name and contact information of the person you can reach out to if you have additional questions about accommodations or have specific access needs. You want to make sure that you do post those, but you also want to make sure that if you say that you are going to do this, that you do actually do this come the day of the event. This shouldn't be something that's a marketing scheme. It should be something that you have planned for already and are going to do day of. So that's kind of our brief overview. If you want to learn more about the successful formats and all of these different types of accessibility for images, we do recommend that you check out the video linked below. Now, during the event is you want to follow all accessible communication principles. That means plain language usage, which we also talk about in the video linked below. But briefly, that means using clear, straightforward language, and speaking and writing in kind of short chunks in ways that are very direct, not using metaphors, not relying on any type of gimmick or anything like that. You want to make sure that you're using accessible images, such as images that use alt text. We have an example of that off to the side. We have a picture of a woman who's signing hello in ASL, and underneath this picture, we have an alt text that reads clip art of a smiling woman signing hello in ASL. So that's an example of both the verbal image description, which I just gave to you, and also alt text, which we have written on the text here. You want to make sure that you use closed captioning and or an American Sign Language ASL interpreter. Depending on what event you're doing here at Cal Poly, it can be difficult to get an ASL interpreter. So you can contact the DRC in advance and try to set that up, but you do want to make sure that you have closed captioning as well in case the ASL interpreter is not able to attend. And even if the ASL interpreter is able to attend, closed captioning can still be really helpful for a variety of people with disabilities. So you want to make sure that that's there in addition. You also want to make sure that you use more than one closed captioning tool, because closed captioning tools are technology and they don't always work properly. So we recommend always having a backup ready to go. Next is you want to make sure that you're not using flashing lights anywhere during your online events. This can trigger seizures in some people and also sensory overload for others. So it is very inaccessible. So please make sure to remove those during your event. Also during your event is you want to make sure that there are no surprises. So as Regina mentioned, you really want to make sure that you're planning everything out and that all information is clear to people ahead of time. So you don't want to make any last minute changes during your event, because if you're springing something on someone, you might be adding something into the event that is inaccessible to them and they now can't participate. It's also really difficult for people with anxiety or who are neurodivergent, because you just kind of basically changed the rules as to what they were prepared for, and that can be really difficult for people. Well, not difficult, it can be inaccessible for people. Next, you want to ensure that people are muted when they are not speaking. The reason for this is, well, there are a lot of reasons. One being that if there's a lot of background noise, it can be really difficult for people with auditory processing disorders, because then they can't hear the main speaker. It can also be really distracting for people who have ADHD, because they're trying to listen to the main speaker, but then somebody's off to the side making a lot of noise. So make sure that you have people muted. Make the event interactive. But I do want to clarify that you need to make sure that you have multiple interactive options. So to elaborate on this, you want to make an event interactive, because if you're asking somebody to, say, sit down for an hour and listen to somebody speak, this can be really inaccessible for a lot of reasons. It can be really hard for people with chronic pain to sit still for that long. It can be hard for people with ADHD. And it's not a great learning environment in general. So you want to make sure that you're allowing people the option to maybe enter a breakout room and talk to other people, or get up and stretch out. Have them, take notes in a specific way, or do something where they're not just having to sit and stare at a screen. That being said, you want to make sure that all of these options are accessible. So sometimes that means planning multiple interactive options. So rather than saying, okay, now I want everybody to get up and run around their house and try and grab something within like 30 seconds as a show and tell, you might want to mention you will want to have an interactive option that is accessible for people who have mobility disabilities and can't necessarily run around their house. So that's what I mean by multiple interactive options. Second to last is provide breaks. The rule of thumb is you want to provide one every hour, preferably 5 to 10 minutes long. If your meeting or event is an hour and a half long, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't offer breaks. It just means that those breaks should be offered at the 45-minute mark. The reason for this is that people need some time to take care of any disability-related needs. So people with chronic pain need to take a moment to stretch out, maybe ice something. People who are on medications might need to go take medications. Providing breaks allows people to take care of their disability-related needs. And then lastly, at the very beginning of the event, you want to tell people who to message in the Zoom room or chat room if they have access issues. So that way they know that they can contact someone real time who will get back to them and help them deal with any access issues that have arisen.
So after the event, you want to make sure that you're sending all of your notes or resources to attendees. So if you provide information on like certain technology things or things to do or like web pages to look at, you want to make sure that you're sending out links and descriptions of all the information that you're giving them. It's also good practice to have people have access to your slides, just to make sure that they get all that information that you're providing and so they can refresh or take any notes or have any more like opportunities to look at it. Also, if you have your recording, sending that to attendees is also very, very beneficial. It allows people to look back not only on like your slides and your concrete material, but also other things that you've mentioned that they may be interested in looking into further or wanting to refresh on. So making sure that people have all of the resources that they need afterwards so that they can take what they can from your meeting or event or whatever it is.
All right, and that is it for our presentation. If you want to learn more about disability and accessibility or resources available to disabled students at Cal Poly, you can follow the Disability Coalition of Cal Poly on Instagram.